As good as you are as a worker, perhaps the most entertaining thing I've ever experienced in pro wrestling is Paparazzi Productions. I've wanted to ask you about Paparazzi Productions for over 12 or 13 years. Like, I thought that was the funniest stuff I've ever seen in pro wrestling. Like, you guys catching Eric Young at like a store, like in spying on Sting, and just all the integration there. Can you please tell me how that came about, how the creative process for Paparazzi Productions and the Paparazzi Championship Series happened? Because that was magical stuff.
So there were basically like two elements to it, right?
Yeah.
So there was me doing stuff on my own, then there was me with Kevin. The stuff with me on my own was them saying, here, you're going to do this, and then me doing whatever I wanted with it.
Yes.
So I could say anything I wanted. And for the most part, I would just try and entertain myself or entertain other people who were around.
Yeah.
Apparently mission accomplished, right? Because like people still talk about that. The stuff with Kevin, originally when they paired us up together, they wanted like a very distinct differential between here's a veteran, here's a young guy.
Yes.
And I don't think they counted on both of us having the same sense of humor. And I don't know why they didn't approach it this way, but we're both from Detroit, right? Like we had very similar stories growing up, and we grew up in a very similar socioeconomic environment. So yeah, we were raised kind of in the same area. And of course, in the U.S., you have your different regions. We're one country, but of course we have our different regions, and there's cultural differences amongst them. So we would, the first time we worked together, just make jokes to make each other laugh. And I don't know that anybody else really found them all that funny half the time, but we did. And it was more so guys laughing at their own shit. Apparently, eventually, enough people found it entertaining to where they started filming more and more of it. But the PCS specifically was Kevin's idea. Because he wanted to do a takeoff of the BCS. I was like, oh, that's great. Everything that you saw there, outside of Kevin and I coming up with the events themselves, everything was ad-libbed. Nothing was scripted. Like, nothing was, here's the script, read this, do that. Everything was on the spot. That's it. That's all there is to it. And typically, if you can entertain yourself, you can entertain other people too. And I think that is the perfect example of that in pro wrestling, because so much of pro wrestling is designed to be funny.
Yes.
And there's nothing worse than like jokes that aren't funny, right? Like nobody likes that shit or has time for it, really. But true comedy is the stuff that I think people have fun doing, right? You look at these guys who they're actors or they're entertainers, and they enjoy what they're doing, and that translates really well. And pro wrestling's no different.
Well, that translated really, really well. There were so many like him always accusing Sanjay of being on steroids. Oh, that was so good.
Sanjay looked great.
And Jay Lethal, like him being like, "Why are you doing this to me?" And Kevin goes, "Well, it's because you're black." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like there are these like little things that just land so well from him, especially because I think part of the humor was a lot of people had this perception because of like the vanilla midgets comment that he's like, he wouldn't want to work with X division guys.
I can't say that anything was further from the truth. I mean, when you consider the term vanilla midget, it doesn't matter if you're a vanilla midget or a vanilla giant. You're vanilla, right? Like midget isn't necessarily the knock. Vanilla is. So, I'm 5'9". 5'10" on a good day, like before I'm hunched over at a computer all day. But I would consider myself anything but vanilla. And I think that was something that had been spread around. Perhaps for those guys or whoever coined the term, that was true, but everybody's experience is their own. And I can tell you that for a fact, for years, he went out of his way to help everybody that he worked with. And he did things that you would never even hear about. Guys weren't making a ton of money, right? He was paying for hotel rooms or buying them food, buying them beer. I mean, just cool shit.